This meeting to order, 4:35 on May 15th, Planning Board meeting to discuss zoning initiatives and some A&Rs. I'll read through the agenda in more detail. This meeting is being recorded. If any of you out there are recording, if you could please let me know. Hearing none, I will assume that nobody's recording this, and we're all going to rely on the recording that's taking place. So our first action item is the deliberation and recommendations on the proposed zoning amendments submitted by Councilors Wheeler and Dolan. And I guess I should do a quick roll call just for the record. George Tlemcen.
I am definitely here.
Jim Allen.
Here.
Amy McMahon, she is absent, as is Jamie Potter and Charles Roberts. I am here, Chair. So at the last meeting, we touched on all the initiatives except for the ADU. We forwarded positive recommendations on the modified parking requirements, and I think on the expanded residential uses within the commercial districts. Those should be, I think we sent out a draft meeting minute memo on that. Tonight we're going to continue the deliberation of the definition of family, whether to incorporate three-family by right, and also on the ADU initiative as well. And we were going to open this, and I am going to open this up to the public for general comment. And Councilor Dolan, as you are representing the public, I would say the floor is yours. I do have the two memos you sent. One recently addressing the ADUs by right, and also the one about the definition of family. I was going to read those into the record, but I don't necessarily have to if you feel like you can, express your opinions adequately this way.
I think my opinions have been a part of this process since the beginning. I think everybody pretty much knows where I stand on things. Mm-hmm. So maybe at this point I'll just limit myself to thanking the members of the board for spending so much time on this, dating back almost 6 months now, and really doing what I think is a good collaborative process. So I appreciate everybody's work. Hopefully we can move on what we can move on.
Yeah, well, thank you, and I really appreciate that. I mean, you and Councilor Wheeler have put a lot of work into this. You've both done a lot of writing, a lot of research. I think you spent a lot of time crafting these initiatives, and I think it's a healthy process. And I'm glad you're here for deliberation. Hello. Yes.
I just wanted to reserve the right, with your permission, to call on Councilor Dolan for clarification of any points based on some of his input and research and stuff.
Definitely, yeah.
Here to answer questions.
Yep. And I am going to read the email that Councilor Dolan sent to, I believe it was yesterday, May 14th. I just saw that this afternoon, and I haven't
seen that yet at all.
Okay, I emailed it to you and Jim. I got it at the last minute. I think I emailed it out to you and Jim around 4. So I'm going to read that one, and I'm going to read that into the record for informational purposes, and because I think it will be additional information for us to deliberate.
Okay.
So taking on, I'm using Eric's May 12th memo as sort of the roadmap for this evening's discussion. I'm assuming that the public comment period is, I'm not going to close the public comment period because we have one member of the public here, and we may be asking for clarification or input as we go. So, the first initiative that we're looking at here is the definitions of family and dwelling 3-family and dwelling multifamily. And this is from Eric's memo. The current proposal to eliminate the definition of family from the ordinance to amend the existing definition of multifamily from 3 or more dwelling units to 4 or more dwelling units, and to add a new definition of dwelling 3-family. A legal opinion from council and any potential impacts on eliminating the definition of family was not able to be obtained by the May 12th deadline. A legal opinion should be obtained by City Council. Based on the additional research done by both the Planning Department and Development and Councilors Dolan and Wheeler since the April 29th, 2020 WebEx meeting, I am less concerned about eliminating the definition of family from the zoning ordinance than I previously was. This is based on the fact that several Western Massachusetts communities have in fact eliminated the definition of family in their zoning bylaws ordinances. All proposed zoning bylaw amendments of towns have to be reviewed and approved by the Massachusetts Attorney General's office. Since then, they were allowed to be adopted after such review, which assumed that they have been legally vetted by the AG's office. Therefore, I recommend that the Planning Board forward a positive recommendation to the City Council as proposed on the March 4th, 2020 version of the proposed zoning amendment. So that's Eric's recommendation to the definition of family. And I guess my thoughts are that that the definition of family as it is in the bylaw now, I mean, it seems sort of antiquated and parochial and discriminatory, based on some of the thoughts that were, that I've heard. So that's sort of my immediate take on the definition of family. George or Jim, do you have any thoughts?
Hi, Charles, it's Roxanne. I didn't know if you needed me for a quorum today.
Hi, Roxanne. No, we're good. We have George and Jim and I are here. You're welcome to join us as a member of the public or exercise your prerogative and become a board member.
Well, no, I was just signing in just to make sure you had a quorum. So I will, I'll listen in for a few minutes, but then I'm gonna head out.
Okay, well, thank you very much for checking in on us.
Yeah, thank you guys for pushing forward.
Yep, our pleasure.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay, so did you, Jim? Did you have any thoughts on the family definition?
I spent 3 hours this afternoon reading the damn thing. And I can't find it now to beat my head against the wall here. The members of the family that are 4 or more that are related or not related, I get confused with that. Has to do with blood relatives and not blood relatives. Is that necessary?
Well, I think that's kind of what we're asking right now. Is that the definition of family that we're going to maintain the bylaw? Or are we going to change to the concept of a housekeeping unit, which doesn't restrict the number of people living in a home by some sort of genetic code?
Well, the part that I read, and I can't find it again to beat me. It almost seemed as though it was extremely antiquated, and that's because of the blood within the family versus the blood outside of the family. You've got, like I have a neighbor that has 3 people living in the same house. That's fine. Matter of fact, they rebuilt the garage to make the house livable for 2 separate family units. I really think that we maybe can be more flexible, if that's the word I want.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I think that seems to that's definitely the spirit of the proposal, I believe. George, did you have
Sure.
anything you'd like to add?
Sure. First, I wanted to say that I believe, I don't have them right in front of me, but I believed in the minutes of the last meeting we did have, my comments were a bit misconstrued because I wasn't saying that I was concerned about eliminating the current definition of family. In fact, I was saying a bit the opposite. I was saying that I had been struck with how much the antiquatedness of that and the potential harmful discriminatory impact of that was attested to by a number of members of the public that really seemed to resonate. And so having heard that and read some of the background, I am very comfortable with eliminating the definition of family as it exists in our zoning ordinance. However, the harder thing for me is to come up with an alternative. And I'll say why. We heard from people about their experience with various communal type settings and living in groups of people and it going well. The long article that Tim sent us that thanks to these delays in our meeting this time, I was able to read, and and also the proposed definition of single housekeeping unit. That what strikes me is these all seem to presume intentionality. These seem to presume that, hey, don't worry about if someone's related by blood or related by marriage legally, then let's just be less uptight about that and recognize that some people want to live together in less traditional arrangements. But looking at the definition, the proposed definition of a single housekeeping unit, it talks quite a bit about sharing household activities, sharing responsibilities such as meals, chores, expenses, maintenance. So it doesn't talk about the space and how many people could live in the space. It talks about how people are living in the space. One issue is how enforceable is that? Of course, how enforceable is it to check people's records whether they're related or not? But it can be something that someone could be taken up on if an issue comes up and then there are a bunch of people living there and then the current ordinance says, wait a minute, there's more than 4 unrelated people, you can't do this. I don't know how you would determine exactly whether people are sharing these activities and responsibilities. And I'll give a scenario I could imagine. We're all, frequently, this is very much tied in with the issue of homelessness. And so say there's a relatively affordable house for rent and 10 people who are currently homeless pool their resources and say, hey, let's all live in this place. And we can split the rent or split the, and it may be not an intentional household, but it might be a household of convenience. And someone might leave and someone else comes in and that kind of thing. And it's purely based on affordability. So that's what I'm having a bit of a struggle with of what is the replacement for the current and more traditional definition of family. So I'll pause there.
Well, that's interesting. So in a way, the phrasing sharing of household activities and responsibilities such as meals, chores, expenses, and maintenance is almost a limiting factor in terms of in terms of a group of people who may be not sharing those activities, but sharing the house.
Yes.
But it's hard to imagine if you have people living in a house together, there has to be a certain amount of just interaction and coordination. Somebody's paying the rent. There's some kind of an arrangement for, or the mortgage. There's some kind of an arrangement for payments to be made and for it to become, transactional in a way. And doesn't that sort of automatically kind of create the activities and responsibilities that are required for maintaining a home?
I could see people living in a shared space and living quite independently as far as a lot of these activities.
And is there anything wrong with that?
I'm not kind of coming to that conclusion. I'm just saying that makes it hard for me to endorse or craft a replacement for a definition. And I'm interested in hearing from Councilor Dolan on this question, because I think the article shared again seemed to presume that there was some discrimination against non-traditional families, but it didn't. It did also seem to kind of presume these were people who wanted to live together for a particular social purpose, not just a convenience of affordability.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Dolan, would you like to respond to George's comments?
Sure, I've been down this rabbit hole a few times. And
Good.
I will emphasize this is a very complex piece of. There are many different pieces of law that interact here. First of all, I think our initial definition of single housekeeping unit was kind of a lack of imagination. Like, we felt like we had to replace it with something. And it was only at the public hearing that the idea came up of not replacing it at all and just eliminating the definition. To me, they kind of do the same things. They're kind of functionally the same. The goal with that definition of single housekeeping unit was to really underline the difference between people living in an apartment and individuals living in a boarding house. That's the distinction that's important, and that ultimately comes down to the type of tenure. So basically, if 4 people sign a lease together and live together, they are just people living in an apartment. But if a landlord is maintaining control of the building and renting out individual rooms, then it's a boarding house. It has to do with that contractual relationship. But those distinctions are already made. So we were kind of trying to follow that with the single housekeeping unit, but it isn't necessary because really the state law is what governs that, and the state law has a lot to say about boarding houses.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to just read an excerpt from Councilor Wheeler's statement. It kind of gets to this issue a little bit. So this is from Councilor Wheeler's statement dated May 6th. I believe he emailed to the board. There are conflicts between the Lodging House Act and the Sanitary Code, but these conflicts exist at the state, not the local level. If city officials are interpreting the Lodging House Act to mean that any dwelling unit with 4 or more unrelated individuals automatically constitutes a lodging or boarding house, instead of properly differentiating between a lodger and a tenant, then they are operating in direct conflict with legal precedent. State Supreme Judicial Court, in the case of the city of Worcester versus College Hill, ruled that it's arbitrary to claim that lack of blood relation makes an otherwise safe situation unsafe. As Mr. Wyman attests, it is likewise inappropriate to use the numbers of unrelated individuals as a catch-all for enforcement rather than prosecuting the conditions that constitute the violation itself. So I think what he's saying there is that he's acknowledging conflict between the state municipal codes about the definition of what a lodging house is, but that limiting the number of people in a home to to 4 people related by blood is arbitrary. therefore not really enforceable.
So can say more, Charles?
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, that to me, like I say, the only time I think the issue would come up with the current ordinance is if there were some other problem. It wouldn't be the count per se. It'd be there was some type of issue that came up that was disruptive to the neighborhood or to neighbors, and then indirectly it came up, oh, hey, this is in violation of this ordinance. That's my sense. Whereas you might have the same disruptive behavior with 10, people who are biologically related there. So, so I guess I wasn't clear. We've had it kind of there's been a lot of give and take and back and forth about this, and that's fine. And I did see in Eric's memo that he was the one you read earlier, that he is the recent one. He's okay with the idea of eliminating. He didn't reference the single housekeeping unit, and I didn't know if the intention was to withdraw that. I mean, that's in the proposal that came to us from the council. It was endorsed by the council, but I didn't know if we were needing to make a decision about that. As far as our recommendation, I assume we have to reference it.
Well, yeah. So I guess that becomes that's a question. Can the initiative as it stands be changed from the creation of the definition of single housekeeping unit to just eliminating the definition of family altogether? And I think that maybe they could be considered separately. Is that we're gonna say we recommend against the adoption of the single housekeeping unit definition, but we forward a positive recommendation on the idea of eliminating the definition of family.
Can I jump in here for a second?
Yes.
This is a point of information. So EDC, and these are two boards with two separate deliberations, so they don't have to end up the same, of course. But what we did was strike the original in its entirety and replace it with the May 4th version, which eliminates the definition of single housekeeping unit. And that seemed to work. I would be concerned that if we withdraw it, then we would have to start the whole process over again.
Well, oh, go ahead, George.
So, two things. One, I had expected Eric was going to be here today. I just wanted to double check with him because his memo of a few days ago, I don't think it referenced the single housekeeping unit definition one way or the other. But I will note that when we voted last time we met, I have so many papers. When we voted last time we met, when we were talking about the parking, the motion was to endorse. Eric suggested the idea that we were sending a positive recommendation based on the March 4th document. So he did. So Eric said that was fine. So and I didn't catch that the March 4th document struck the single housekeeping unit definition, but Tim, you're saying it did. So that would be, with that precedent from our last meeting that Eric indicated was fine from his point of view, we could do what Tim is suggesting, is just basically endorse the March 4th version of this, which includes, would eliminate the standing definition of family and would not include single housekeeping unit.
Right. I mean, that's sort of what I was getting at. I don't know if I was clear enough, but that seems like a good pathway, and it's consistent and coherent with our own deliberations, which are independent.
So I apologize for being a little confused about the various versions. It's been, we've killed a few trees.
Yeah, we have. And crashed a few WebEx systems.
Right.
Yeah, that too.
Okay,
So
well,
on- I would be ready to, sorry.
please, George.
I would be ready to make a motion unless, we can still deliberate it, but I would be ready to make a motion on this. And so this is also including the 3-family and multifamily. This motion.
So we didn't, all right, so before you make a motion, let's just touch on the creation of the 3-family by right, removing it from multifamily, definition of multifamily, and creating its own definition of 3-family by right. Yes, George.
The definition doesn't refer to whether or not it's by right. It's just the definition, I believe.
Oh, so that would be something that would show up in the use code.
Right.
Okay, so right, so we're not addressing that. We're creating the definition of 3-family as its own independent, development type, independent from multifamily. And it has its own set of frontage requirements and lot size requirements as delineated in a modified footnote 1 that actually is part of the dimensional changes. So that it's the dimensional changes that are on the table. So it's linked in certain ways to the passage of those that revised dimensional table. Yes, George?
Again, wouldn't those be independent? That you have, I mean, we're talking about amending the dimensions for a 1-family or 2-family. We're not changing the definition. So we're just saying at this point, we've had no definition for 3-family. And the definition of multifamily has been 3-family or more.
Right. Okay,
So I think we're just saying there now would exist a 3-family definition, and the multifamily definition would be changed to be 4 or more.
Right.
So I think it's got nothing to do with the dimensional stuff. I think they're independent things.
Right. This isn't the definition is strictly that. It's not talking about the regulation of the use or how it's governed by zoning. So it's just a definition. Okay. Yep, that's right. Thank you for that.
Can I step in here a second?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim.
I don't know if you know where I live. I live on Maple Lane, a very short street, and it's really, really congested here. My lot is 74 feet by 72 feet. It's a really small lot. And I have a 4-room house and a 2-car garage. And my sister is getting ready to retire, and we were thinking about making the garage into a separate house. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Possible, not possible? Depends on how you interpret the law or what?
Well, that's a question for the building inspector and the head of department and the Department of Planning and Development.
Okay. All right. I just don't want to see us do to anybody, tell them they can't do something that's been done for 50, 75 years.
It sounds like that ties in with the ADU question we're getting to.
Yeah, that does tie into the ADU question, Jim, which we're going to have a spirited conversation about, I'm sure.
Okay. All right.
Did you have any thoughts specifically about the creation of the definition of a 3-family home?
No, I don't. I was just trying a while ago here, try to think of 3-family homes that I've been in recently, and I really can't think of any.
Yeah.
There aren't that many left, without being, places like the high rise or, really serious multifamilies. But
Yeah, there's a number of 2, 3, 4 family houses kind of tucked into the neighborhoods. They're around.
okay.
But as currently they're zoned as and regulated as multifamily, which brings its own sort of set of requirements with it. So I think this just creates it pulls 3 family out of multifamily, which has different lot area requirements, and puts it more into the scale of single and 2 family residential development. And just makes it a little more attainable.
All right.
Any more conversation about this from the board?
No, that's basically it.
Okay.
So,
So George, you want to take your hand?
I would move to, in accordance with is it May 4th?
Was it May or March 4th?
Thank you. March 4th. The March 4th version. I would move to add the definition of 3-family dwelling, to amend the definition of multifamily dwelling as it is there, to eliminate, remove the definition of family, and that there would be no replacement for the definition of family. That's my motion.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion at this point? All in favor?
Aye.
Jim?
He said yes.
Yes, aye.
Okay, great. Sorry, maybe you were. All right. Unanimous. Motion carries for a positive recommendation on the definition of family and the adoption of the definition of 3-family into the ordinance. Thank you. So next on the list is the dimensional requirements, proposed dimensions, the dimensional requirements of the urban, residential, semi-residential districts. And again, this is from Eric's memo. It should be noted that section 205.3 subsection C, D, and E allow for lot development that may otherwise not have been allowed to occur. These existing sections of Greenfield zoning ordinance accomplish many of the goals of the current proposed zoning amendments. These sections of Greenfield zoning ordinance have been utilized many times in the past. So that's informational from Eric. Did the board get a chance to sort of absorb the language in those sections of the bylaw? I mean, I think they're helpful, and we can talk about those more in a moment. So Eric's recommendations are without an analysis to determine if the existing infrastructure to include drainage, sewer, and water within the urban residential and semi-residential districts can handle the potential increase in density and impervious surface. I recommend the planning board forward a negative recommendation to the city council as proposed and suggest the following. Frontage in the RA and SR districts. I recommend that frontage not be decreased to less than 50 feet. Minimum lot area. I recommend that the minimum lot area for both districts not be decreased to less than 5,000 square feet for a single family home and 7,500 square feet for a 2-family home. And then he has note these area and frontage dimensions match MGL chapter 40A section C. So that's linking it back to comprehensive permit requirements throughout the state, which is an interesting link. Minimum landscaped open space. I recommended this not be reduced to less than 30%. Setbacks, front yard setbacks should be based on the existing front yard setbacks along the street. The rear setback should not be reduced to less than 20 feet, and the side yard setback should not be reduced to less than 10 feet. And then he references footnote 1 as being appropriate, and that's the footnote in the table of dimensional requirements. So I guess there's been a lot of thought about this, and one of the questions I've had from the beginning is that the RA zone is very large and comprises 3 or 4 different kind of distinct neighborhoods, and with different sorts of density, different styles, different yard sizes, different lot dimensions. And so I wonder about applying something like this uniformly across all zones, without some more consideration. Something to think about. I think also that addressing how these reduced lot dimensions tie in to the reduced lot dimension allowances that are in the bylaw are important and not really addressed in the initiative as it's written. For instance, the building inspector can reduce a lot size just based on the average sizes of lots within 300 feet of a lot on the same street. So there's an allowance there. There's also an allowance for up to 20% reduction in dimensional requirements granted by a special permit from the ZBA. I could see having a conversation about maybe having that 20% lot reduction by site plan approval, for instance, as opposed to special permit, to make it more attainable. That's a thought I had. Anyway, those are some of my initial thoughts on this, and we can elaborate more. But Jim, did you have anything you'd like to share on this?
No, not right now. I don't know. I just look at lots as I drive by, and it's about a full gamut as you could have in some areas, and yet in some areas they're way too overly large. And like if you go down the last 300, 400 feet of High Street, some of those lots have 200 and 300 feet of frontal space. But yet, I've got a 74 footprint. That's it. We need to. I think we need to be more. I would say normal, but we need to set a precedent for it, I think.
Mm-hmm. George?
Without a precedent, we're just creating problems, I think.
Okay. Those problems sort of being the fact that we have these potentially oversized lots and no mechanism for dividing them into small, or creating smaller building lots out of those lots.
Right. If you look at the last 4 or 5 houses on the east side of High Street, those places are huge. They're beautiful homes. No, don't get me wrong. And at some point somebody's going to do something with them. But I'm afraid that something is going to be chop it up like a boarding house or whatever, you know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. George, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, thanks. And I did notice, Tim, your request to chime in, and I'm sure Charles will call on you after. I just wanted to throw in on when we met 15 days ago, I know I was, and we did discuss the subsections of 200-5.3 CD and E that is some built-in flexibility based on a few different factors. And there was a lot of comment from various sources, including a lot of the public input, about what we're talking about now, how sprawling a zone this is, and how it has different parts of it have different qualities. It's not one uniform feel to it, or you know, when you think of urban, how close it is for the downtown, for example. So one scenario we talked about 15 days ago, looking at the minutes, was to kind of highlight those existing flexible options that are there, and rather than do a negative recommendation on these this dimensional change proposal, to recommend that the proposal be withdrawn, so that some of the structural research Eric was talking about, as far as the infrastructure and drainage, et cetera, but also that we do an examination of that zone and see if it needs to be altered somehow, the zoning. And we had talked before, when we had, Tim, you'll remember some of our discussions in the fall when we were actually face to face. Can you believe it? And we talked about the first impression was, oh, that would be very expensive because we'd have to have some consultant in to do that. Well, Eric commented 15 days ago, which is striking to me. He said he thought we could do that in-house. And that to me is an enormous distinction, because it reduces the potential amount of time for that, but also the expense. So that was, I am interested in hearing what everyone else thinks, but that to me, emphasizing these existing options, encouraging a withdrawal of the motion as it stands, or the proposal as it stands, and doing some deliberate engagement of folks in town to try to see about some reconsideration of that zone and how it works.
Okay, thank you, George. Yeah, so Councilor Dolan, I just saw that you would like to chime in, and at 5:12, and I will allow that. So
I'll try to collect my thoughts. This is the hard one, and that's been made apparent many times through this process. And I think part of the reason that it's so hard is not only because the zone is so big and so diverse, but also because the numbers that we're throwing out, honestly, are arbitrary. The original numbers were arbitrary. They were just based on my lot and the fact that I like to live here. And honestly, I think Eric's numbers are arbitrary too. He linked them to that section of MGL, but I didn't really see the relation. That was like a grandfathering clause. So pretty much anything we're working with seems to be more or less arbitrary. And that's the most difficult question to solve.
right. Well,
go ahead. Sorry.
Well, that's where sort of I find. I'll read this. I find this paragraph really interesting. The inspector of buildings may issue a building permit for residential lots in the RA, SR, and H districts with reduced lot area, frontage, and width requirements, if not less than the average lot dimensions of residential lots within 300 feet on the same street. So we do have that's one mechanism in which we can go into a neighborhood where a lot of lots are smaller, and we could potentially subdivide two adjacent lots with open yard space in between the two and create another building lot in there. You could see two neighbors who have enough combined lot area to create a building lot. They could get together and decide that they want to A&R their properties and create a building lot, and either build a house themselves, build a rental property, generate income by selling it to a developer. So
Can I?
I think it's a mechanism that exists. And yeah, Councilor Dolan, if you want to have a clarifying point you'd like to make.
Well, I think there are a lot of mechanisms like that in the zoning ordinance, and I am just allergic. This is what my most recent email was about. I'm allergic to regulating by exception. I think we need to make it clear and transparent from the beginning. I worry about the person who's going to buy a building lot that's non-conforming. Nobody's going to do that if they are not, if they're relying on a kind of discretionary special permit. So in general, throughout the zoning ordinance, I would really like to see us decide on thresholds and make them really clear. That's just me, though. Certainly, there are mechanisms in there.
Okay, I'm not sure how far to go down in terms of engaging in deliberation here, but your point's appreciated and take it and I take it in the spirit of clarifying the intent behind what you've initiated here. So, and then there's also the 20% reduction allowable, dimensional reduction allowable for lots. So if we reduce lots down to some sort of minimum, does that ability to reduce that by 20% more apply to these reduced lots? And if no, it needs to be stipulated in the zoning or reflected. And if yes, then we really want to think about what is the functional minimum lot size a lot could be, and then increase it by some percentage, 20%, I would say, if So I think that needs to be thought about and crafted in the initiative. George, you have any thought on that?
Well, no, I accepted the responsibility to be put on the spot. I appreciate Councilor Dolan saying about the relative arbitrariness of the numbers that have been thrown around. Again, my inclination, and I was going to ask if you were aware, Charles. I know you would.
Wait, there's a lot of audio disruption here. Were other people getting that?
Yes.
Okay, if folks aren't speaking, if they could just put everything on mute, then that tends to help reduce that noise. And I'll play along by putting myself on mute.
So I think it was you, Charles, who had suggested the recommend that the proposed amendment be withdrawn. And my understanding is that's a strategic kind of approach, so that it allows it to come back. It doesn't bar it if it's not a negative recommendation. Bar it from coming back in less than 2 years. I believe that's kind of the purpose of that. So I'm just asking for confirmation about that. And so that is my inclination, is to go in that direction, to point out the flexibility is there. I totally appreciate Councilor Dolan's position about it's better to have things clear and consistent proactively. But I think it's been very good to get this dialogue going. Obviously engaged a significant portion of the community, and I would, especially because according to our planner, this could be done in-house. I think it's important that we keep some momentum on this. So that would be my recommendation about the dimensional proposal.
Can I jump in with a procedural thing?
Sure.
I would recommend that even if we, perhaps rather than withdrawing it, we eliminate all of the changes except the ones related to 3-family lot sizes and pick some lot sizes, because we do need that in there now that we have a definition. I mean, assuming that we have a definition of 3-family in the zoning ordinance.
Right. Well,
So the way, sorry, go ahead.
So one way to address that is to just stick with the the prescriptive requirements for a 2-family, and then add the same square footage for a 3-family that you're adding for a 2-family, which I think is 1,000 feet or something like that.
Yeah, just as long as I don't want there to be a major inconsistency. That's all.
Yeah, I think that would be a way to do it. So yeah, thank you for your thoughts, George. And that's where I was going with this also. That I see this as a win on a lot of potential fronts to increase area and lot size, lots for available houses in town. It creates value. It expands the tax base. But I think that through an inclusive process that would include planning board representatives, ZBA representatives, somebody from the mayor's office, somebody from the city council, and then an ad hoc group of 3. I'll pick a number, three people from from the community to get together and put something together that really has sort of a broad-based support and buy-in. Could really be a win for the town. And I think, as Eric alludes to, it could be a grassroots effort in terms of looking at some of the zoning. We have all the GIS information, to sit down and look at lot sizes across various neighborhoods, and to understand sort of where natural boundaries may exist for delineating certain kinds of zoning. It's a process, that has to be gone through. So I think we have that ability. I think you would have the enthusiasm and buy-in of people to make this happen quickly. It's not something it's gonna take a couple years or even a year. I could see this being a process that could play out in months as opposed to years. Jim, do you have any? What are your thoughts on the idea of sort of doing a recrafting of these lot dimensions by sort of a group consensus like that?
I can see why we want to do it. I can see the output being a great idea. I'm just not sure how it's going to work. If we're going to downsize or upsize or try to make something good out of something that's outside. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I guess I would use I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jim.
No, I'm all set.
Okay. I guess I like the term right-sized, even though it's kind of an annoying term that people use. But it kind of makes sense. I mean, there are appropriate densities across various neighborhoods that kind of make sense, and there are areas where we can definitely create more housing within neighborhoods, and there are also neighborhoods where you could say, you know what, the housing here is appropriate. It has an achievable, workable density, and we don't want to go below this threshold. And so it's looking for the sweet spot. I think that's sustainable across and appropriate across a few different neighborhoods in town, and trying to build consensus around those areas and density possibilities.
Yeah, there's a lot of areas that we've done a great job with. I think over by the nursing home over on I can't remember what street it is off on Newton Street. Anyways, that's great. It's all new condos. They're 15, 20 years old. They're great. We've got other areas where there's been a lot of housing put in, but there's been some areas that it just should never have happened. Maybe we should have some sort of I don't know, having a board look closer at certain things that are being done.
Yeah, I think that's kind of that's a thought that, you know, that we've been thinking of, that we've been talking about here. So I think something like that could be helpful in a process like this, which is you know, it has a lot of potential impact across the, you know, across a range of neighborhoods. So George, do you feel like we are at a point here where we could craft a motion?
It's kind of, it's a bit awkward trying to piece it together here, because as I see it, we're talking about,
Yeah, what are the highlights we're trying to hit here?
well, I think that the informational piece that Eric pointed out, I don't know that that goes into a motion per se. It's part of our discussion, obviously, which is rationale, but it doesn't have to be in the motion. The motion is dependent on the what is the proposal before us. And so, and I appreciate Councilor Doe pointing out about the with the additional definition, there is some information here that's relevant to the new definition of three family that didn't exist before. And I'm just trying to sort that out. I don't know if you're comfortable making a motion, Charles, given our shorthandedness. I know you typically don't.
Is the chair able to make a motion? I guess I can make a motion.
It hasn't been our practice. I don't know if it's verboten or shrugged, avoided.
It is allowable on commissions like this, because I checked into the DC.
All right, thank you. Okay, so what we want to talk about is the idea of a focus group. Okay, so I guess in order of sequence, we would recommend that the dimensional initiative be withdrawn. I don't know what the language is, whether it's withdrawn or tabled, but whatever pathway is required, so that it doesn't trigger a 2 or 3 year waiting period for it to be reinitiated. So is that a tabling, or is that, just procedurally speaking, is that a tabling, or yes?
What would make sense to me, and what makes sense to me is not always what's correct, but would be to forward a positive recommendation only on the parts that apply to the 3 family. And I think you could also suggest that the remainder be withdrawn.
Thank you.
So in other words, the council will have to vote on this, but what will be before them is only the changes that relate to 3 family.
So in terms of the 3 family, what's recommended now under table under the dimensional table is that there's a requirement for so the current requirement of frontage is 65 feet. What was proposed was to reduce it to 40 feet, and sort of the compromise for 3 family was to go to 50 feet. So maybe, I don't think we'd want to go, you know, below what's currently in zoning, which is 65. So maybe we just keep the frontage at 65 feet, and then we we say that you have to have an additional 1,000 square feet above what's required for a two-family home. And that, I think you need 10,000 square feet for, is that the number for a single-family home? And then, if I can get it here quickly. For a single-family home, you need 8,000 square feet minimum lot size, 10,000 square feet for a for a two-family. And then I guess we're saying that it's since the initiative is asking for an additional 1,000 square feet, I would just stick with that. So
I just get the answer to my question as to whether or not I can do what I want to do. I only have 4.1 acres. I mean, 0.4. No, wait a minute. 1.1 acres. There we go. I don't have anywhere near what I need to do what I would like to do.
Yeah, no, not. So it would be 8,000 square feet for a single family, 10,000 square feet for a two family, and then
Right.
11,000 square feet for a three family. So an additional 1,000 square feet, and we're just pulling that out of the initiative as it's written, rather than trying to change it to something else. We would be changing our recommendation on the frontage from 50 to something higher, and there's no reason to go above the 65 feet that's currently required for a single family or two family home. So we could pick an arbitrary number, like you need 75 feet, but I don't know what that achieves. And I think this will be can be addressed, in a future possible effort to sort of redraw all this.
Mm-hmm.
George, you're thinking.
Well, if I'm reading this accurately, what the current ordinance says is that for multifamily structures, and multifamily currently includes three family, there shall be the minimum requirement for two family plus an additional increase in lot area for each additional unit. But there's nothing about an increase in frontage.
Right.
So the frontage is independent of whether it's 1, 2, 3, or multiple.
I agree.
Okay.
That's why I would be inclined just to leave the frontage at 65 feet and not address that.
Yep. And
But what the zoning does say is that, if you want to go beyond a two family, you have to add 2,000 square feet for an additional family.
correct.
So maybe we should stick with that.
That's the current.
Right.
Can I
Do you have yes? Do you have a clarifying point you'd like to make?
Yeah, I'm looking at my original recommendation I made without looking at the zoning ordinance, and now it's in front of me. And I think actually I think the language actually works for three family. For multifamily structures, that shall be the minimum requirement of two family plus an additional increase in a lot area equal to the following. So that would just apply to the new definition of three family.
Right. So in other words, you need 12,000 square feet for a three family.
Which, if we're going to look at all these dimensions again, doesn't really matter. It's not an inconsistency. So it might
Coherent, right. It's a coherent pathway for the here and now.
It might be cleaner procedurally to actually just recommend that we withdraw.
Withdraw the three family concept.
Withdraw this whole motion.
The dimensional.
The dimensional part, yeah.
Right. In which case the zoning would default to you would need 12,000 square feet for the two family, and then an additional 2,000 square feet for a three family.
Yeah.
That's clean. I think that's very clean.
There's no actual inconsistency. I'm sorry, I introduced that and it was wrong.
All right. Okay. So upon thoughtful deliberation with the members of the board here, I would make a motion that we recommend withdrawing the dimensional initiative proposal and encourage the proponents to gather a focus group that could include members of the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, the mayor's office, the planning department, city council, and a group of concerned citizens who would be interested in partaking. And I'll let the city council decide if should they decide to go in this direction. I'll let them decide how big what that group should look like. And that's the motion. Do I have a second? George, have you seconded?
Jim did, I'm sorry.
I will, yeah, Jim's here, I will, certainly.
Okay, Jim, thank you. All in favor?
Discussion, further discussion.
Aye.
Discussion, right.
Sorry. So I think Tim was actually on to something when he did bring up the three family, because now we're recommending adding in three family as a new definition, but it's not mentioned in the current dimensional table. It goes from two family to multifamily, which does not include three family technically, if that were approved by the council.
So what we should be adding in the footnote B is for three family and multifamily structures, there should be a minimum requirement of two family dwellings plus an additional increase in lot area for each additional unit equal to the following. And then there are the prescriptive requirements in the code. So it's adding three family into that note, just the word, the term three family.
You're talking about the footnote 1 on the dimensional table?
Yeah.
The other thing is, further below that, there had been in the proposal, there have been frontage for three family lots.
Right.
Those were kind of based on what the proposal dimensions had been.
Right.
So I just don't want us to leave a legal gap where three families aren't considered. Three families could be considered equivalent to multifamilies for lot size and frontage for the time being, and then this could be addressed further with the other.
Well, except that I hear what you're saying, but if we say for three family and multifamily structures, there should be a minimum requirement of two family dwellings plus an additional increase in lot area equal to the following. So that addresses lot area. And then the next line down says frontage for multifamily dwelling lots shall be as follows. So that excludes single family and two family just by definition. And so I think it would do the same for three family.
Well, now it excludes three family because multifamily means four or more.
Right.
So what I'm saying is we should add in, as the footnote does, for three family and family.
Right.
Footnote 1, and then below we should say frontage for three family and multifamily.
No, because we don't want to require. Wait a second here.
So remember, currently multifamily includes three family.
Right.
If we're not trying to alter the dimensional requirements yet, if we think that's premature,
Right.
just the frontage, we would add the words three family and multifamily dwellings. The lots should be frontage should be as follows: 100 feet for the first 5. RB is 140, RC 200.
Except then we're saying you need 100 feet of frontage if you want to create a three family.
That is what currently multifamily is a 3-family. And so if we're not trying to adjust frontage, because, you know what I'm saying? If we're trying,
I get your point. If we want to create the smallest footprint possible on the zoning, then it would be, that's what we would do, as opposed to sort of letting the 3-family default by negation into the frontage requirements for single family and 2-family homes.
so it's right. It's so there's part of the proposal that was forwarded to us included frontage for a 3-family. And that would be less than what we were suggesting we're reverting to for a 1 and 2 family.
Right. They were suggesting 50 feet,
Right.
and zoning for 1 and 2 family is currently 65 feet,
Right.
and for multifamily it's 100 feet now.
Right.
So you're saying that sort of the lowest impact version in terms of how it changes or affects the existing zoning is to let the 3-family default into the frontage requirements for multifamily, since that's the way it's currently regulated now, as opposed to letting it fall in with a 2-family, 1-family. That seems reasonable, and it's all going to be up for potential consideration.
Because I totally agree that I would be inclined to make it somewhat less than it would be for a 4-family or more. But I don't know if we can just pick and choose where we want to make some tweaks like that.
No,
I would think.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll in addition to the focus group, I will add that we should be adding the language of 3-family into the dimensional requirements and frontage requirements by saying that for 3-family and multifamily structures, there shall be the minimum requirement for 2-family dwellings plus an additional increase in lot area for each additional unit equal to the following. So we're inserting 3-family into there. And then we're also going to insert 3-family into frontage for 3-family and multifamily dwelling lots shall be as follows.
Is Jim second that? Sorry.
Jim, are you available to second my modified motion?
Yes. Yes, I will.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion?
No.
No, I think we're in pretty good shape.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So we have sent a negative. I don't know if we sent a negative recommendation on this, or if we're sending a recommendation that they withdraw and reconsider with a. I think that's our recommendation.
That was the motion, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I don't have Eric to read it back, so it's all going to be recorded. It's going to be recorded here, and he'll suss it out, and he'll give it to us to review prior to your meeting Tuesday, Councilor Nolan? Yeah, so hopefully he'll get this out Monday. We can look at it, review it, and then we can publish it.
To me, it seems
when
like
is our next meeting?
Well, I think our next meeting is, I don't know if it's next Thursday or Thursday after next.
Oh, it's still within May. Okay. Oh, for some reason I was thinking May was all over with because we've had so many tries at trying to get into May.
No, I know.
Okay.
Well, so yeah, our next scheduled meeting is the 21st, which is next week. That's going to be the night after the city council's meeting.
And we'll assume that will be a WebEx meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to ADU. I'm going to read Eric's recommendations on this. Proposed zoning amendments relative to accessory dwelling units. How's everybody doing? Do we need a break or anything?
I'm okay, thank you.
Okay.
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 The planning board needs to reach consensus on whether to allow detached ADUs by right or by special permit. Both options have their pros and cons. It should be noted that since the accessory dwelling unit ordinance was adopted in August 2016, only 3 applications were submitted for an ADU. All 3 were for detached ADUs and all were approved, with 2 being built. The current proposal calls for allowing all types of ADUs by right, to include detached ADUs, which currently require a special permit from the ZBA. Regardless of whether detached ADUs are allowed by right or by special permit, I recommend that the planning board forward a negative recommendation to the city council on the proposed amendments relative to accessory dwelling units. As proposed, he goes on to elaborate, if the for detached ADUs by right, if the proposed zoning amendment to add a new definition of dwelling 3-family and the proposed amended definition of dwelling multifamily and the proposed zoning amendment to reduce the off-street parking requirements for dwelling units from 2 to 1 space per unit and residential uses are expanded in existing districts as proposed, all are adopted by city council, the consensus is reached to, and the consensus is reached to allow detached ADUs by right, then I recommend the following amendments to the ADU ordinance. And it's basically what he's doing. He goes on to amend the definitions of accessory units, within and without, and detached, in various zones, and whether or not it's site plan review or special permit by ZBA. So, and it's a lot of pages. So I don't think we have to read that. We have we all have it for the record. So just to sort of summarize where because this is a little bit complicated, because the original thought was to eliminate internal and attached ADUs as a definition and have the only definition for ADU be detached. But because attached and internal ADUs are still being required by special permit in the commercial zones, we have to maintain those definitions of detached and of attached and internal ADUs.
I'm not quite following myself.
Pardon me?
I'm not quite following what
All right, so
I understood from Councilors Dolan and Wheeler that they were suggesting reintroducing those because it would still allow when there's a window between the lot size for a single and a 2-family, this would allow an internal or attached ADU in a limited set of circumstances.
You mean if with insufficient lot area?
Insufficient lot area for, if you have a single family home, there's insufficient lot area for a 2-family, which would essentially, an ADU would be considered a 2-family, and if it's attached or internal, but that would and I don't know how many there are. I remember we discussed this previously. That for those between, currently it's 8,000 and 10,000. For those in that middle, in that area there, this would allow an internal or attached ADU.
Yeah, so Eric's thought was that the way that those were currently being, so the way that those, because it's all by special permit now, if you have a non-conforming lot for a 2-family and you're wanting to put an ADU onto a single-family home, that's addressed in the special permit process with the ZBA. So if it's made by, as proposed by right, then then you can have, then you don't need the special permit for the non-conforming lot. That's the idea. Because I was trying to get to the to the crux of this with Eric, so I could understand it, and
Okay.
and
Sorry.
it doesn't mean I got it right. Let me go-
How does this relate to say condominiums that are along the base of the Poet Seat Tower?
Condominiums along the base of the Poet Seat Tower. I'm not sure. Are you looking something up, George?
Yes, I was looking up the ADU ordinance at the moment. Sorry.
Um,
So currently, we have all three types, and currently the within is just the building inspector, right? The attached is special permit, and obviously detached is special permit. So as and I didn't know if I interrupted your flow, Charles. I want to back up and
well,
see if you want.
let me see if I can make clear the things that I do understand, which is that because we are now allowing, because the creation of three family as a definition and something that may be allowed by right, that sort of covers an ADU. Is a single family house with an ADU is a two family home. A two family home with an ADU is a three family home. So there is no reason to create the internal or the attached ADU in the zones that allow those uses currently. In the central commercial district, you're not allowed to have two family and three family homes. They're only allowed by special permit. And they didn't change that in the zoning initiative. So if you wanted to have either an internal or an attached ADU in the central commercial district, you still need a special permit. That's the way I understand it.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, please.
Our initial idea when we had our first conversations was to regulate ADUs basically like two family homes, or in some cases three family homes.
Right.
We abandoned that because it took away the opportunity to build an ADU on a lot of less than 10,000 square feet. So I'm actually seeing them as two very distinct categories. A two-family home is on a conforming lot. An ADU is on a non-conforming lot for a two-family. There's no advantage to calling it an ADU if you have a conforming lot. The only advantage of the ADU definition is that you can do it on a smaller lot. That's the reason I wrote it.
All right. Okay, that makes sense to me. That's kind of what I was thinking.
The central commercial part is new to me. There may also be something there, but I'm I'm also lost.
Well, apparently, if I go to the use table here, so if I go to residential uses. So right now, the general commercial, in the general commercial right now, single family and two family dwellings are only allowed by special permit. So if you were going to create an ADU in one of those districts, it would have to be by special permit. Unless you pull it out of the definition.
I would think as long as you have an existing single family home, you could do an ADU by right.
In any zone.
Well, the zones that I'm looking for that right now. The zones that we allow it by right, the zones that we've designated, is that all of them?
Well, ADUs aren't allowed in well, actually, we just
Industrial and yeah.
Office and planned industrial.
Aren't they really though? I mean, the DPW office is nothing more than an ADU brought in from Connecticut and dropped on Wells Street.
It's not a dwelling. It's a business use. It may be residential construction, but it's the occupancy is business.
Boy, that's a pretty tough to swallow. The town can do it, but the residents can't.
They may work late there.
Yeah.
Jim, you love to bring that little DPW modular up.
So what I would say by way of clarification is an ADU is an accessory to an existing use.
Right.
It's not a new use. So it wouldn't trigger a special permit. I mean, and this is just my understanding. It wouldn't trigger a special permit even in an area where single and two family homes require a special permit.
Well, ADUs are currently not allowed in general commercial or central commercial. Did we in the use change table, did we make them allowable? Was with in those two zones? I mean, is it proposed that those become allowable? Did ADUs become allowable in those zones?
Good question.
You're getting caught up between
I know.
what the zoning says and what we've.
I'm looking that up right now. Oh.
Yeah, so what we suggested was that the zoning was having amended allowed by right within the RCB, RB, RA, SR, LC, TI districts. Currently, this use is only allowed by special permit in these districts. Add the amended use category accessory dwelling unit as allowed by right within the hospital, central commercial, and general commercial districts. Currently, this use is not allowed in these districts. That was what was proposed. And you know, there's a lot of vagaries around this. And you know, I think in general, I'm in favor of ADUs, and I think most ADUs are going to fall into the category of what would normally be considered a 2 or a 3 family home. I think the idea, so the difference between an ADU and a 3 family home, a 2 family home with an ADU, are the restrictions that go on the ADU, which is it can't be bigger than 900 square feet and it has to be owner occupied. Those are the salient defining items behind an ADU that make it appropriate for development on a lot that could only support that can support a 2 family, but not a 3 family. So and I, you know, I think that the idea of having those internal and attached ADUs by right makes sense. And I think it should still be site plan review. I mean, which I guess is what by right generally means by site plan review. The detached ADUs. So the idea is that these detached ADUs are currently being suggested to be allowed by right. Northampton, which is sort of our closest, you know, kind of comparable neighbor in terms of, you know, population and density, has ADUs still allowed by special permit, and that's just as, you know, that's just for reference sake. The thing about detached ADUs is that they're going in to you know, tighter neighborhoods where there's going to be construction that's being created. The design and location and character of whatever is built is going to have an impact on the neighbor. And by going to by right as opposed to special permit, I appreciate that neighbors in potentially you know, tight conditions are losing out on the ability to not weigh in, but in some ways to weigh in or to be part of the process for the development of these buildings. Councilor Dolan, would you mind if I read your statement that you emailed relative to ADUs? Because I think you have some good thoughts here. In light of Director Torog's recent memo, I am writing by way of public comment to encourage both EDC and the Planning Board to allow development of all types of accessory dwelling units by right rather than by special permit. Furthermore, I'd like to present evidence that we as city's officials should favor a thoughtful by right approach to zoning as a best practice as we continue to balance the needs of existing homeowners with the pressing and demonstrated need for additional housing in the city. A by right approach to zoning provides homeowners, landlords, and developers with a consistent, predictable guidelines, allowing them to chart a clear path for an investment in the community that maximizes efficiency in terms of both time and money. In contrast, special permits and other discretionary processes introduce uncertainty, which increases costs and acts as a disincentive for investment, making housing less affordable in the aggregate. In the current example of ADUs, a home buyer who wants to create a detached ADU or who needs to do so to make a property affordable is unlikely to risk such an investment in the face of an approval process that is discretionary, unpredictable, and likely contentious. I believe that we as a city can craft regulations for by right development that are clear, explicit, reasonable, consistently enforced, and built on public input. I also believe that the changes to the AD ordinance on the table are an example of this type of regulation. In limited cases, with the city deems special permits to be necessary. I hope we can all ensure that these decisions are made transparently and according to a clear set of criteria. The shift in favor of by right zoning in the planning community tracks with an increased emphasis over the last 10 to 20 years on the nationwide lack of affordable housing. And this is from, he excerpted from the American Planners Association Handbook on Policy and Guide. So this excerpts eliminate barriers to affordable and multifamily housing development and exclusionary zoning rules and practices, especially in areas where such development is supported by the necessary transportation, social, cultural, utility, and economic infrastructure. Local jurisdictions should allow multifamily mixed income housing as a by right use and reduce permitting barriers that create development uncertainty. Increase the cost of land and development and stimulate opposition. Local jurisdictions should streamline approval processes that coincide with identified housing needs and demand and establish higher thresholds that are subject to special permit reviews. To reiterate, this is a policy decision ratified by the membership of a prominent professional organization of planners in North America. Additionally, the APA action agenda recommends allowing multifamily housing as a by right use and establishes higher thresholds that are subject to special permit reviews. It states that when the proposed developments coincide with identified housing needs and demand, the approval process should be streamlined. Among a number of examples, I could cite the Prince George's Community, Maryland Planning Department explicitly lists implement by right zoning among its land use best practices, while the National Multifamily Housing Council identifies by right zoning as a crucial tool in the housing affordability toolkit. Guidances from the Obama administration in 2016 placed established by right development at the top of its list of actions that states and local jurisdictions have taken to promote healthy, responsive, affordable, high opportunity housing markets. Support for by right zoning over unpredictable special permits is clear and consistent in the planning literature. Tim concludes by noting that in all three annual budgets I've worked on as counselor, Greenfield's new growth has hovered near zero, where our tax rate has inched ever closer to the Proposition 2.5 levying ceiling. Adopting a responsible by right approach to ADUs and to zoning in general represents a win-win in this context. Such an approach facilitates the type of mixed income housing that our residents desperately need, while also expanding the tax base, preserving city amenities, and keeping Greenfield solvent in the long term. For so many reasons, we can no longer afford to use our zoning ordinance to freeze new housing not for our urban neighborhoods. And I hope members of both committees will consider this perspective when making their decisions in the coming week. Respectfully submitted, Tim Dolan. So that's very well-written and convincing argument, Councilor Dolan. I think that one of the key paragraph for me in this is where you state you believe that as a city we can craft regulations for by right development that are clear, explicit, reasonable, consistently enforced, and build on public input. You also believe that the changes to the AD ordinance in the table now are an example of this type of regulation. So, when some of the things I was talking about that are concerned to the ADU, that I'm thinking about when I'm weighing whether it's by right or by special permit, is that there really are no guidelines set up for ADUs, and they are by special permit. So what I'm wondering is if there's a consideration process that could happen where we, detached ADUs are by right, but there's more of a prescriptive set of design criteria that have to do with issues like height, fenestration and proximity to neighbors, landscaping, access, not having attached garages be allowed as part of an ADU, things like that. If there's a set of criteria that could be developed, that would help ensure that these things are going in a way that's compatible with the neighborhood. Because right now there really is no prescriptive design requirements for these things other than they be 900 square feet. They conform to zoning setbacks, and they be owner occupied. So I think the owner occupied criteria is important. I think that limiting the size of the ADU just to 900 square feet as opposed to a third of the size of the existing house or greater makes sense, because you could have like a 3,000 square foot house and then build a 1,000 square foot ADU. And I know that in Northampton, it's just 900 square feet. That's how big your ADU is. And you can actually do, I've designed them, you can design very livable 3-bedroom ADUs. So I think that maybe incorporating, I don't know if you didn't address the size of the ADU in your proposal, right, Jim?
We did.
We did.
We added, we took away the 1/3 of the total square footage. We just made it 900 square feet.
Okay, all right, good, good, yeah. So those are some of my thoughts on the ADU. George or Jim?
Yeah, I'm all done.
Okay. George, I think you're muted.
Thank you. I was trying to not be distracted. The ADU is very complicated, obviously, and I'm trying to clarify our task here, because we had the proposal sent with council endorsement for us to look at, and then we got the revision from Council Dolan and Wheeler dated 4th, and those were significantly two versions. As my understanding is correct, currently the accessory dwelling unit within does not require a site plan review. It's based on the inspector of buildings giving a building permit. Currently, the accessory dwelling unit attached requires a special permit from the ZBA, and currently a detached ADU the same. As Eric pointed out, he was suggesting in his memo 3 days ago that one of the things we need to reach consensus on is whether to allow detached ADUs by right or special permit. And I'm not sure, and actually with regard to what you and Council were just talking about, as far as the size, looking over the March 4th, I think it still includes the 1/3. I was just reading it, sorry. Rather than simply 900 feet, square feet. So, sorry, I'm looking where that was.
I just checked. You're correct on that. That must have been a suggestion from the mayor.
Okay, thanks. So I'm trying to understand what we're trying to respond to as far as the proposal put in front of us. My inclination, I will say, in response to Eric's leading question about the detached ADUs, is that I appreciate the need to reduce on for the most part, to reduce barriers to options. And I think that some of the other proposals in this package about increasing options for three-family and multifamily are helping with that. I think are distinctive. I think they're distinctive in that they are a separate. They're not contained within the same building as the primary residence, and I am of uncertain mind about the potential impacts. Obviously, there's been concerns raised by a number of people in the public from the input about impact of less regulated ADU options. And Eric points out there were 3 applications and all for detached, and all 3 were approved. That's in the last 4 years, 3+ years. I don't know what that tells me. I don't know if that tells me there were only 3 because the process is onerous. I don't know, and they were all approved. I'm not sure what that tells me. It probably don't have a lot of data to base our experience on. So I'm inclined to be more cautious, I guess, about the detached. I could see how the attached could be shifted to a site plan review, or even inspection by the inspector of buildings. But my inclination would be for the detached to remain a special permit for the time being. But again, that's one factor. There's a lot of components here, and I'm a little unclear what we're recommending on exactly.
May I clarify about that? My understanding. I think you're muted, Charles.
Unmute yourself, Charles.
Yes, if you could summarize the initiative as it was originally crafted, and then relevant modifications from March 4th, so that we can have a clear idea about, because there've been a number of permutations here.
Yes, and I hope I can clarify what's on the table and what's not on the table. So the motion as originally proposed is not viable anymore with the without the dimensional requirements that we just recommended with. So that's not really something that would work. The differences between the March 4th version and Eric's version are minimal. I think they're only he did a couple of things to clean it up, and he made the 2 versions, obviously, one with a special permit and one without.
Mm-hmm.
So those are kind of, obviously I'm not on the committee, but if I were, I would just be choosing between those 2, because I think those are the main ones at the moment. Major changes include we reintroduced the owner occupancy requirement at the mayor's suggestion, and cleaned up some of the language. What else? Obviously added the 3 definitions back.
Okay.
I think the most of it was cleanup and details.
Yeah. So I think, thank you. I think that the dimensional regulations and the detached ADU are kind of, they're linked in a certain way, and I think that, because having to do with how big is a lot, is it and how sustainable is putting an additional structure on a lot, what are the dimensions that are required, what are the setbacks. I could see the permitting process for the ADUs being perhaps part of that dimensional conversation, and I could see I could see a pathway where maybe there are prescriptive design requirements for ADUs that allow it to become by right, because they give neighbors a certain sense of protection and assurance that the ADUs are going to be built according to a certain set of guidelines that have been developed through community consensus. And just is, as one thought, and then it can be by right, and it doesn't have to be a cumbersome or adversarial special permit process, but it's a little more considered. I don't know if this is a viable option. I floated it by Eric, but it was the idea of maybe it's by right, but you still have to email all the abutters so they know what's happening. And then at the public hearing, it won't be a public hearing, but at the site plan review meeting, they can come out and they can express their opinions. And the board, may or may not make suggestions to the applicant, in response to either what they hear or their own thoughts or response. But that as long as the building is in conformance with prescriptive requirements, it can't be denied. It's by right. So there's not as much room for discretion. Would a process like that, George? How would a process like that strike you?
Well, I would be interested in hearing if everything. It sounds like a kind of because I know that part of special permitting is the requirement to notify abutters by a certain procedure,
Right.
that they have a guaranteed right to be heard. It sounds like you're talking about treating a site plan review as kind of a special permit light, if you will, where we would inform the neighbors somehow, and they'd have a chance to have input. But it's a little murky to me, because the one is a clear procedure that has legal grounding. But again, our task today is our task to kind of create these new ideas or to respond to the proposals before us.
Well, I guess in the spirit of what we just did with the dimensional requirements, I'm suggesting or wondering about the idea of forwarding a negative recommendation or I should say a recommendation that the ADU, the zoning as it's written, be tabled and then considered holistically with the dimensional requirements by that same group of folks. Because it would be nice if detached ADUs could be by right. And I think that just some more consideration needs to be given to the way the detached ADU bylaw is written for people to be comfortable with that.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate your point of view that it would be nice if they were allowed by right. I don't have, as I was saying, a clear position on that. So I'm being cautious about how I'd come down on that. But and I'm not totally clear, and forgive me if I'm not putting the pieces together, Charles, but how I get it that if we're going to do the reflection and community collaboration on the dimensional requirements, you could also be doing that on the ADU. But are you saying that would be just a nice housing focus to work on, or are you saying it's somehow tied in with the dimensional requirements? I'm not quite getting that latter part.
Yeah, nice is a terrible word. I'm sorry I used the word nice. So ADUs are an effective tool for creating, housing opportunities for families, and or I should say for homeowners, for property owners who want to continue to occupy their dwelling and provide provide housing choices for friends, family, relatives, to join them and live collectively if possible. And so, and the more you can remove barriers to those kinds of opportunities, the better. And so I feel that if we can find a way through community consensus to create a pathway for by right development for ADUs, maybe it's worth the effort. And I think that right now there really is no criteria for ADUs in terms of buffer zones or height. I mean, technically you could build a 35-foot high ADU. You could build a tower with a 20-foot loft in it. I mean, not that somebody would do that necessarily, but there are no height limits of 35 feet for the RA zone. So so as it is right now, the special permit process as it is written is kind of open-ended. There's not a lot to respond to. It's completely discretionary.
I think the term is clearly subordinate to the main structure or something like that.
Right.
I think that's the.
So I think in some ways the detached ADU, whether by special permit or by right, could benefit from a little more prescriptive design criteria that are required for these things.
Can I make a process suggestion?
Sure.
I would suggest that this may not be an either or, and that perhaps we could take an incremental step now maintaining the special permit, but also when we form that committee, do a more comprehensive assessment and make further that kind of introduce those prescriptive elements in kind of a phase 2.
So we would be potentially forwarding a positive recommendation on the internal and detached ADUs by right, and then sending a recommendation to a negative recommendation on the detached ADUs by right, and recommending further consideration as part of the the process that will be evolving.
I think it would just be a positive recommendation of Eric's second option, which already included the detached by special permit. Does that make sense? We are getting a lot of versions.
Trying to find my way back to Eric's memo here.
I did notice Eric's memo was one place where the 1/3 of total gross floor area was crossed.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a positive change.
Well, so detached ADUs are currently are by special permit. So really the only change we're making is that we're saying that they're limited to 900 square feet, and we're maintaining the owner occupied requirement. And
And there are changes to the zones in which we can build them. So the permitting process would be the same. I think actually we'd have to check if his version allows attached ADUs by right. We want to double check that, but the most important thing is allowing it in more zones. That would be the major change we're making now. And that's something it seemed like we've always had consensus on. I'm not sure if that's changed.
So I'm looking at the part of the use regulations here. So we're there's the changed use recommendations don't talk about they talk about allowing detached and within accessory dwelling units as allowed by right within the health, central commercial, and general commercial districts.
Are you looking at page 14 of Eric's?
Yeah, page 14.
Yeah, so the paragraph that starts add the amended use category accessory dwelling unit attached
Yeah.
as a use allowed by. So basically, we're keeping the special permits for detached because those are already in the ordinance.
But you're removing it from general industry.
That was Eric's change. He apparently doesn't want to see them in general industry. But he has split the difference, it looks like. So in certain areas, an attached ADU would be allowed by right, and in certain areas, it would require a special permit, and those would be health and the commercial districts. Oh no, those are by right. Excuse me.
They're all by right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, right, so I'm a little confused by parts of the memo because on page 4, I see the 3 definitions within attached, detached. Right underneath that, applicability, I see within and attached are crossed out. And then at the top of page 5, it's referring to, I assume this means that detached is the only thing considered, and that's saying it's only a site plan review. So this is going away from a special permit for a detached. That's the top of page 5 of the May 12th memo.
So hang on. Page 5 is the version that is all by right. So the version that includes the special permit for detached starts on page 9.
On page what?
Page 9.
Thank you.
Right.
I think that's a good place to start.
Thank you. Thank you.
And there on page 11, it says accessory dwelling unit attached will require a site plan review and approval from the planning board. Accessory dwelling unit detached will require a special permit granted by the Board of Appeals.
Thank you.
So to summarize, if we were to, looking at this one, the main changes are we're allowing ADUs in most zones, and we're allowing the attached ADU by right. The detached still requires a special permit.
Right.
And I think, and then there's the 900 square foot change, which is also significant.
Right, which isn't in here. Right? Correct? Oh, he's suggesting it.
It's in Eric's version, yes.
All right. So if we were to follow a recommendation on Eric's recommendation to pass the zoning with the to forward a positive recommendation on the initiative with the idea that detached ADUs are still a special permit, and that the city that could be taken up at a later date as part of this group if we wanted to recraft if the town wanted to recraft the ADU detached ADU language such that it was more prescriptive in its design requirements.
Yeah.
And we can do that because we're not. So you'd want to withdraw the element in the zoning initiative that's asking for detached ADUs to be by right. So it's not being voted down by the city council, and it can be reinitiated as part of a.
Essentially, what we do procedurally is we would strike the original in its entirety and just replace it with Eric's version.
Okay.
That's the.
Okay.
I think that's the cleanest way to do it procedurally. There are probably several ways. There usually are.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, any further debate about this, George or Jim?
No, I think I'm all set.
The elimination of the 1/3, was that in the original council endorsed proposal?
It was.
That was, okay.
And we, like I said, we must have changed it back on the recommendation of the mayor, but Eric knows more about her policy than I do, so.
Thank you.
I'm looking for that language in here.
And you're supporting that, keeping it to 900 feet, Charles, because you think it would be one of those guidelines that provide some protection, so to speak, for what might be perceived as overdevelopment, and because the standard in Northampton. So
Well, yes, it is the standard in Northampton, but also it's a lot of communities use that 900 square foot threshold, I believe, I think. And I just, I don't think you'd want anything much bigger than that. And if a house was, again, any house over 2,700 square feet, you could start to get a larger ADU. I mean, there aren't a lot of houses in downtown Greenfield that are over 2,700 square feet.
Yeah.
So it really becomes an issue for larger homes, in the suburban districts. And it seems a reasonable.
okay.
A reasonable cap. George, do you see the where the unit size is the size of the unit is addressed in the original?
Yep.
Where is it?
Well, this is I'm looking at the EDC minutes from March 5th, actually, which contains the 12.8 proposal. And I see that it's a B5.
Yep, I got it. Yep, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. So in the original proposal, the third of the gross floor area was crossed out.
I do remember that we originally went back and forth with that. And I think our research showed that some communities had it even a bit under 900 feet. Some had 800, I think, as a standard. So,
yeah, I think the planning board originally recommended 900 square feet, and then the city council changed it to also include the one third the area of the house, whichever was larger.
that may be right.
Yeah. So I'm good. I'm good with lowering it back down to 900 square feet, just limiting it at that. So,
Agreed.
so if we were going to conceptually consider a motion here, it would be to forward a recommendation adhering to Eric's recommendations for the maintaining special permit for detached ADUs, with a recommendation that ADU design requirements be considered in a future effort to look at ways of making them possibly permittable by right.
Is it design requirements? Is that what you're?
Well, I'm thinking about trying to create, more definable, prescriptive sort of design requirements, like not having big windows looking directly into your neighbor's yards, like having like height requirements. They have to be no more than 2 stories, for instance. There's landscape screening alongside yards and potentially rear yards on adjacent properties. And I guess those are the main things I can think of. And then, it has to be, obviously clearly subordinate to the primary structure. It's hard when you start to use language like it has to fit in architecturally with the existing house, because I wouldn't want to say things like that. But it has to be. I mean, you can use words like compatible with the neighborhood. That's compatible is open to interpretation. So that's why.
It seems like what you're talking about is doing a form-based code for ADUs. And as we go forward, I mean, form-based coding is something I think can solve a lot of our problems. So having this in the mix might actually be helpful in illustrating that when we have that conversation. Yeah,
like subordinate to the primary structure means, it has to be set back. It can't be, the front yard setback maybe 25 feet, but that doesn't mean your ADU can be at 25 feet.
Yeah. There's a lot of room to be creative in that, in defining things.
Yeah. And there may be, I think looking at the ADUs going into existing non-conforming structures, like a garage, for instance, would be something to look at and consider and think about how that's, how can that be sort of considered in a thoughtful way in terms of both the property it's occupying and its immediate neighbors. And then, So George, do you want to try and make a motion on this one, or do you feel like? I mean, I can do it too. I'm fine doing it.
I would prefer, Charles, again, you go ahead. I've been, as I say, I'm not at my sharpest just because of the circumstances of the meeting after the workday and stuff. And I've had trouble tracking all these various permutations. So I think you've got it. So I'd be happy to refer to you.
All right. Well, as I say, I think that, Eric's going to be reviewing this meeting. He's going to be drafting minutes. I'll be in conversation with Eric, and we'll circulate the minutes for everybody to look at before they're released to the EDC, to make sure that they're accurately capturing everything that we've talked about.
Well, the main thing is the motion.
Right. So the motion here would be to forward a positive recommendation on the notes in Eric's memo for ADUs detached ADU still being governed as a detached, I mean, as a by special permit. So that's option 2, I believe, in his memo. And then that we would reinstate the 900 square foot cap that was originally outlined in the zoning initiative, and that we would recommend that that detached ADU permitting process be part of a future consideration, along with the taken hand in hand with the dimensional requirement conversation that'll be happening, down the road should the city council decide to move in that direction. So that's my motion.
Before second, what about the issue of the different zones that they're allowed in?
Well, so the difference there was that Eric was taking it out of general industry, right?
I'm looking at his memo, pages 10 and 11.
Um, 10 and 11 doesn't talk about the use tables, does it?
Well, he's striking certain, oh, maybe that's not relevant. Maybe that.
No, that has to do with the so he's removing I guess it sounds like what he's saying is that the inspector of buildings may issue a building permit authorizing the installation of an accessory dwelling unit within an existing or a new owner-occupied single-family or two-family home, period. And so it would be allowed in all districts, an internal ADU.
No, it's the last page. Well, it's confusing because it's what we have now plus the changes on the last page. Because that's still subject to the use table. It'll still be prohibited in office.
It's prohibited in office, planned industrial, and Eric's suggesting prohibiting it in general industry as well.
And I'm not totally clear. Is he suggesting that we take that change away because that change was already made in the last round of zoning changes?
No, I'm not clear on why he was striking that. He had some thoughts about not wanting to limit general industry by having too many residential uses adjacent to it, and it may have been part of that thinking that they didn't want to limit general industry by having ADUs nearby.
So I think I've resolved it, if I may. In the last paragraph in the memo, it says recommendations relative to the GI districts. The second sentence is one of these amendments, so the previous round of amendments, added all types of accessory dwelling units by special permit within GI. So yeah, I think he just wants to have a little bit more control over what's happening there, which seems totally reasonable.
Yeah. Okay, so why don't we maintain that?
Yeah.
Okay. So so George, are you comfortable, forwarding that we're basically forwarding a positive recommendation on Eric's memo addressing detached ADUs by special permit. Starting on page 9.
Detached by special permit, yes.
Right.
Yeah. So you're waiting on me, Charles, to take it?
I'm waiting on. Yeah, I mean, do you want me to restate the motion? Maybe it's been so long. Maybe.
Please, thank you.
Maybe I should. Okay, the motion is to forward a positive recommendation to the city council that reflects Eric's recommendations for the detached ADU by special permit, and also incorporating his change to maintains the ADUs by special permit in general industry as opposed to by right, and then also maintaining the 900 square foot cap on the ADUs as originally suggested in the zoning initiative, and then recommending that the city council consider looking at ways to modify the prescriptive design requirements for detached ADUs so as to make them perhaps more appropriate for site plan review.
Second.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Is that our business for this evening? Well, we still have 3. So that's good. Thank you.
That's my business for this evening. So
Thank
I will
Well,
let
thank you for
know the
thank you
rest.
for hanging in there for 2.5 hours.
I really appreciate you putting in all this work. Like I said, I know it hasn't been the cleanest process, and we've had a few pandemics to deal with.
No, but it's you never want to see the sausage being made, but in the end, it's.
Yeah.
All right, well,
Yeah,
thank you very much.
I think we've come to a good point, and I really appreciate it.
Good, and we appreciate all of your work and diligence on it.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. So George and Jim, we have 3 A&Rs to consider.
Yep.
And have you? I've looked at them. They seem fairly straightforward. I don't think much can happen on these until Eric gets back and initiates them. What I'm wondering is if there's a way that we could approve these things based on verification from planning and from the planning department that they do in fact meet all applicable zoning standards, and then like a provisional approval, and then I can go in and somehow figure out how I'm going to sign these things either virtually or otherwise.
You have, you don't have yet input from Eric that these do be.
I'm sure they do because they always do. Well, let's talk about them quickly here. the first one is for that project that we reviewed for the center school up on Bernston Road. And it looks like I got to get my magnifying glass.
Hello?
So I think what they're doing is they're cordoning off. They're making a separate lot for the existing house that's on Bernston Road right now, and creating enough frontage for the for the back parcel where the school is going to be built.
Okay.
Okay.
And so B frontage is 38.62 feet. You know, I'm sure that's what they need for zoning. I mean, I don't know. I don't have the table in front of me, but you know, these things are usually put together in such a way as that they adhere to zoning.
Well,
And we don't.
yeah, Eric passed them along, apparently without comment, to you.
Yeah, he did.
So I would make what is our language again? To endorse or
Well, I would say we would I think we're approving, we are approving, even though the approval is not required.
right? That's what I mean.
Approving the A&R as submitted, you know, provisional of verification that it meets all zoning requirements. And
Okay.
land area or something like that, something to that effect.
I would second that.
Any further discussion?
No.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I would also move that the chair be able to sign on behalf of the board.
Second? Any
I
second?
second.
Okay,
I
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so the next one is for a parcel at the intersection of Oakland and Summer Street. And it's,
Number 12. Yep.
yeah, it's a parcel of land.
It's a cute little house with a cute little garage attached.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out who's getting this property.
I thought it said that on the paperwork, but maybe not.
In the survey, they're referred to as, I don't really see where the parcels, oh, here we go. No. It says, you know, land is being conveyed to parcel A, but it doesn't really say which is parcel A and which is parcel B. So I can't tell if this little strip of land is being given to the property to the north or to the property to the south.
Right.
Well,
I don't
know.
Well, we could just say that we need more, we need additional information on this to be clear about.
Yeah, that'd probably be better.
About what lots being conveyed to which.
Now, is there a time frame on this? There sometimes is in these A&Rs.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, again, as long as everything is conforming to zoning and these things are put that way, I think we could do. I think we could just say we could use the same language. We could make a provisional approval based on, based on the planning department, verifying and confirming that all required lot frontages are met, lot frontages and lot areas are met.
Do we have any paperwork that goes back to before we had any WebEx problems that might give us the information?
No, these were received during the WebEx days, so.
Oh, okay. All right.
Parcel A is a portion of book 5197, page 38 of parcel A to be conveyed and made a part of lot 1. So that parcel A that we're looking at is actually being given to lot 1, which is the lot to the north.
Okay, thank you.
What they're giving is not a building lot. It may create a building lot. I mean, we don't really know why they're giving the land, why the transaction is being made, and that's not really our purview.
Yeah. Okay.
All that matters is that the lots are conforming. We're not creating a non-conformity. And it looks like, he's got 148 feet of frontage, so it looks like this looks good. I would recommend that we forward.
I would.
If I remember right, it's a garage attached to a house via some sort of a lattice work.
So I will make a motion to endorse this A&R.
Okay. Second.
Okay. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I will further move to have the chair sign on behalf of the board.
Any second on that one?
Jim?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor? Discussion.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So the third one.
Third one's Martin Road, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Did you drive by here, Jim?
I did, but I couldn't find it. I don't know what the hell I was looking for, to tell you the truth.
No, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to figure out where
Yeah.
things start and stop. And these buildings are set back from the road, it looks like. So 83,960 feet to be conveyed to portion of 4627, page 202. It doesn't really say, but so that parcel is being conveyed to.
Now, where is parcel A?
I think you know what I was doing. There is no parcel A. I'm sorry. 83,960 square feet. So that
To be conveyed, right?
that parcel is being conveyed.
83,000 is about 2 acres.
Yep.
Just shy of 2 acres.
Yeah, this one's a little harder to understand.
Yeah, it is.
Well, we could wait till next Thursday on this one.
Is that
Okay.
what we're meeting again? We are meeting next Thursday?
Yeah.
Is Eric going to be expected to be back Monday?
Yeah, these things are. I mean, I don't see why we can't just approve this with the same language.
Okay. You got that.
I'll leave that to you to move. I'm really having a hard time understanding this one.
Yeah, well, I am too.
If we're meeting next week, I don't know if it's essential. I don't know the time frame on these.
Eric didn't say anything about them being time sensitive.
And Eric told me that he was only going to be gone for 2 days, is what I understood.
Yeah,
And that was yesterday and today.
Yep, he'll be back Monday. Well, I'm fine tabling this until Thursday.
right.
And we can always just have a last minute WebEx meeting if it's time critical, call special meeting.
Okay.
Joking, George.
We don't do well with those, but okay.
But do we have business for next Thursday?
This,
What's that?
I don't know, things may come up. I don't know. There's nothing that I know of on the agenda for next Thursday. Why don't we just approve this with the same language that we're using on the other two? So I would make a motion that we approve this.
The other two have a date in which they needed to be done by?
No, I'm just trying to sort of clear the decks, but for Eric, because he's gonna have a lot on his hands with those minutes. He's got to get those all out by the end of the day, Monday. So we could just, vote to approve this based on confirmation with the planning department that all frontage requirements and zoning requirements are being adhered to. Bye, George.
All right. So did you make a motion? I'm sorry.
I was going to make a motion that we approve this A&R. We provisionally approve this A&R, based on confirmation from planning that all dimensional requirements have been adhered to. All zoning dimensional requirements are in conformance. There we go. Further discussion? Is the north arrow going in the right direction?
It is.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the tail end?
Yes, I move that the chair sign this on behalf of the board.
Do we have a second, Jim?
Oh, yes, we do.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion. Well, thank you both so much. This has been a heroic effort. I mean, all in all, I think we've probably had at least 12 hours of meetings on these initiatives from start to finish. And thank you so much for your guidance and wisdom.
Thanks. It's just unfortunate that when we had all hands on deck with Jamie and Eric, we weren't able to meet because I know that some inefficiency and for me, lack of clarity. I apologize if I didn't do enough of my homework. I was just having trouble following some of these convolutions of these proposals.
No, it's tricky. It's far from ideal. I do feel like that that we got to the right answers in the end. And I think that Councillor Dolan appreciated the effort, and I think that, I'm hopeful the city councilors and the EDC will take our recommendations to heart. That's all we can do.
Very good.
Our next meeting is on Thursday, is that correct?
Well, there may not be anything on the agenda, so we'll wait and see if something comes up.
All right. If there's no other business, I would make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Should we talk about this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, gentlemen.
All right.